Good evening. Nobody said it better than the Beatles. Get back to where you once belonged. Except we think you all still belong here. So good evening, I'm Peggy Burns, Associate Dean for Development and Alumni Relations at the GSD. I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight for the first GSD Comeback. We share a bond that links us deeply together. We care about place, we care about space, and we care about community. Collectively, we believe that design can make the world a more just and resilient place. I'd like to begin by celebrating this place by offering a land acknowledgement. Harvard University is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. We pay respect to the people of the Massachusetts tribe, past, present, and future, and honor the land itself, which remains sacred to the Massachusetts people. Welcome to this sacred place. In this very space, Gund Hall, which has stood tall here now for over 50 years, we've had over 400 alumni and friends registered to join the Comeback event. Over 1,200 of you participated in an alumni survey we did during COVID, and you shared your desire to come back, to spend time with old friends and make new friends, to hear about all the departments and programs in the GSD, regardless of what program you graduated in. You asked to be intellectually engaged and to be updated on issues that the GSD was facing. You wanted an opportunity to connect with students, and frankly, you wanted to have fun. So we plan to hold the Comeback every other year with these exact priorities in mind. So please know that this is the first Comeback, but it won't be your last. We have many alumni celebrating milestone anniversaries tonight, and I'd like to call out several of those years. So congratulations to the classes of 1967, 1972, 1990, 1992, and 1997. Let's give them a round of applause. These classes have taken the opportunity of the Comeback to create their own activities to coincide with the events tonight. We have alumni joining us from many classes ranging from 1958 all the way through 2022. Now, it seems like we just had the second commencement for 2022, but we're delighted to welcome our new graduates back as well. We have many friends of the GSD here for the Comeback, and they too are a valuable and welcome part of the GSD family. So welcome to this special space, which connects all of us with meaning, memories, and purpose. You are the GSD community. I'd like to thank the GSD Alumni Council, who worked for years to establish the Alumni Award, which is the highlight of our evening. They will share more about their process with you, and you will hear from each of our distinguished award winners. This is a very special part of the Comeback and will anchor this event going forward. So thank you to the Alumni Council members for your leadership and tireless energy, and I'd like to give them a round of applause too. So much of the work we do focuses on improving community by addressing challenges. Infrastructure improvements, rising or lowering water levels, climate change, affordable housing, and on and on. We are a community that cares about the world and in turn that cares about each other. To celebrate that tonight, I'd like to ask each of you to take a minute and introduce yourself to one or two people around you. Let's start tonight by expanding our knowledge of the GSD community. I'm going to give you a few minutes for these introductions, or maybe 2 minutes, and then after that, I'll have the pleasure of formally introducing Dean Whiting. So meet your neighbors. Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to call us back together, and I can't whistle. So, hopefully, you've just made the first of many new connections tonight, expanding your GSD community. So those are the three things we really want to think about. Place, space, and community, and we'll celebrate those all together over the weekend. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dean Whiting. Oops, sorry, I thought that might be mine. Sarah M. Whiting, Dean, and Josep Lluís, Sert Professor of Architecture, joined the GSD in July 2019. Whiting has taught at Princeton, the University of Kentucky, Illinois Institute of Technology, and the University of Florida, in addition to Rice and Harvard. She frequently lectures throughout the US and abroad, and regularly serves as a critic of architecture and urban design. Whiting has worked with the Office for Metropolitan Architecture, Peter Eisenman, and Michael Graves. Dean Whiting received her Bachelor's of Arts from Yale, her Master's of Architecture from Princeton, and her Doctor of Philosophy in the History and Theory of Architecture from MIT. A few more discrete facts about Sarah. She loves to run. She speaks fluent French. She was a member of her French club in high school. And just last night, I sat behind another dean, whose name I will not reveal, at a musical performance, who shared with me that Sarah was their favorite dean colleague. So now, introducing our favorite dean, Sarah Whiting.
So before anything, let's just pause and take this in. There are over 400 of you who registered. I can't tell how many people are in this room, but it's pretty full. Celebrating together in person. That's amazing. You hail from Chile to China, from San Francisco to Virginia, and from every program at the school. The GSD is an extraordinary place, and it's really great to welcome you back. So none of this would be possible without the tireless work of Peggy Burns, the GSD's Associate Dean for Development and Alumni Relations, and her incredible team. You guys are getting ahead of me, so I'd like to ask Peggy and her team to stand. And now, let's all give them a round of applause. So can the whole DevAR team stand? So I'm too nice to give you a pop quiz, but I'm still going to give you some homework, just to fulfill your sense of being back here as a student, though hopefully not to give you any nightmares. Please prepare yourselves to ask some questions of the Alumni Award winners during the conversation. So we're going to open it up to audience questions, and I expect there to be some. So since you were all such excellent students, I'm going to assume that you've read the email that I sent out on September 7th. But just in case you're so overwhelmed by emotion and have forgotten its content, I'll remind you that I outlined 3 priorities for the school. That's not an easy task, given that what defines this school and what makes it so exciting for me is its breadth. This place is a crazy amalgamation of just so many different programs, so many different interests, so many different backgrounds. So it's actually not easy to corral everything. I bring some Texas terms to corral the school under certain priorities. We do incredibly varied work, so not only across the departments and programs, but even within a single program or a single class. So I would still argue that my 3 priorities bind us all together as a school. So they are building on the promise of the core, and I use that term. It's an important term for the school. Everyone knows that the core is the foundational coursework for every department. But I see it not just as design core, but also all the required courses within any program. So any department or any program that has certain requirements. So building on that promise, because the strength of the core, the strength of these requirements or this disciplinary foundation is, I think, something that really is important at the GSD, and I think we need to recognize that and move that forward. The second is ensuring our relevance. We can only really contribute once we have that strong core foundation, but if we don't contribute and actually turn design to the relevant questions of the day, then what are we doing? right? This is a really important school. It has an important name, and I think that we need to carry that name outward and deal with the problems in the world. And finally, the third one is expanding our reach and understanding that we need to reach a broader audience. So design is not a luxury. It's something that really organizes the world and advances us forward, and we should help people understand that. Frankly, design couldn't be more important at this moment. It's a moment when the world has come together over the pandemic and climate change, but it's also been torn apart by global inequalities and, frankly, extraordinary selfishness and short-sightedness. Design organizes and presents information, policies, procedures, opportunities, spaces, programs, positions, possibilities, and more. Don't let anyone around you think that design is simply icing on a cake or something for the 1% to enjoy. A couple quick highlights that I want to underscore for you, though I'll hope that you've all signed up on the GSD's website to receive news and information about the school, so I'll keep things pretty brief. We've opened the admissions process for the new Master in Real Estate Design program, which is designed to prepare future practitioners to approach real estate through a lens of design forward thinking, equitable opportunities, and climate considerations. I want to thank Gerald Caden, Frank Backus-Williams, Professor of Urban Planning and MUP alumnus, our inaugural director of the MRE program, for his work in launching it, and you can hear more about that from him tomorrow. I'm also so pleased that Gary Hildebrandt, MLA 85, and Peter Lewis Hornbeck Professor in Practice, that's quite a title, accepted my invitation, or my arm wrestling, to become the new chair of the Department of Landscape Architecture. Gary has taught here since 1990, and he's the founding principal and partner of the Cambridge-based firm Reed Hildebrandt. By the way, I encourage all of you to listen. There was a great conversation between Gary and Grace Law, professor in the architecture program, on Grace's Practice Matters podcast. It goes through the formation of Gary's firm, and so I recommend that podcast. Also representing the MLA camp this evening is Allyson Mendenhall, AB 90, but more important to us, MLA 99. Allyson is the first GSD alum to serve as president of the Harvard Alumni Association. Finally, I want to recognize our dear building, Gund Hall, which turns 50 just next month. John Andrews, MArch 58, designed Gund to be a space that encourages collaboration and dialogue within and across studios, programs, students, and faculty. We'll celebrate the building's birthday with an exhibition and lecture next month. Stay tuned. And please walk around and take note of the little nips and tucks we've given this 50-year-old. Better bathrooms, for one, and that's a big one. Check out the floors in the trays. We've gone down to the concrete, and also go to the 4th floor to see how we've blown it out to Quincy Street, taking out some offices, so expanding the view all the way across. It's on the Cambridge Street side. We're still trying to upgrade further with the hope of refenestrating Gund to make it sustainable. Just imagine Gund not freezing in winter, not sweltering in summer, and not raining inside in all seasons. Please talk to Peggy Burns if you know anyone who can help us with this rather pricey goal. I want to thank all the generous donors in the room, because we have many. You've all helped the school with our many needs, particularly student support, which, as you probably know by now, is one of my very top priorities. I'm really committed to making design education more accessible for all students, regardless of personal financial circumstances. I've allocated $4 million of my own budget to establish a one-to-one match for endowed gifts to support future design leaders. Please consider joining me in this critical effort. During Beer and Dogs, after this event in Piper, I urge you to connect with the current students, as well as your friends and fellow classmates. The students are just extraordinary here. And so please take the time. Peggy encouraged you to meet the other people around you in this room. Take the time to meet our students as well. So tomorrow you'll have a chance to learn about a wide range of our current projects, studios, initiatives, and exhibitions. So I would like to turn to the core, if you will, of tonight's celebration, which is the Alumni Awards. Let me introduce this evening's MCs, our past Alumni Council co-chairs of the Alumni Awards, Ana Pinto de Silva, MDES05, who's been on the council since 2017. She's CEO and founder of the firm Together, which is not spelled together. She can explain that. Ana is also innovator in residence at Iowa State University. That's a pretty fabulous title. Innovator in residence, yeah, I like that. I also welcome to the podium Kristina Yu, MArch 95, who's been on the council since 2016. She's a principal at McLean & U. She's also an associate professor of architecture at the School of Architecture and Planning in New Mexico. Welcome to the podium, Ana and Kristina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Whiting. I must say, in addition to your remarkable leadership, I was just reflecting to Kristina, I really didn't know how funny you were until tonight, so thank you for that. As you all may know, the Harvard Graduate School of Design Alumni Award honors outstanding leadership by the GSD alumni, underscoring the essential role that GSD graduates play in leading change around the world. The award recognizes and celebrates the diversity, range, and impact of GSD alumni within their communities and across their areas of practice. The GSD Alumni Award honors up to 3 individuals each year who demonstrate outstanding design leadership within their communities. This inclusive approach allows the GSD Alumni Council to celebrate the inherent diversity, range of innovation, and impact of GSD graduates worldwide. Now, those are lots of words to say, and as I'm reading them on my phone, I remember Kristina Yu, Thomas Lobke, Peter Kuhn, Brad Quigley, and many others sweating every single word of those sentences, working so hard across many years to make this award possible. The award couldn't have come to fruition without the support of our council and without the leadership of Peggy Burns. And so we're so grateful to all of you for making this happen and to celebrating the award. Thank you.
We have the fortune with the jurors of 2022 to have this honor to look at 120 plus submissions for nominations. We're excited that our awardees have popped up amazingly and naturally and organically. With that, in the order for 2022, Donald L. Stull, MArch 62, in memoriam, and M. David Lee, MAUD, 1971. Donald, an African-American pioneer in architecture, started Stull Associates in 1966, which became the award-winning Stull & Lee, Inc., SNL architecture, urban design, and planning firm in 1983. Before his death in 2020, Donald was a member of the Distinguished College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects and recipient of the Boston Society of Architecture 1997 Award of Honor. With David at the helm as SNL's president since 2013, the firm has continued its leadership in the design of multifamily housing, educational and healthcare institutions, office buildings, retail, and manufacturing facilities. The firm has also led numerous urban design engagements across the country. David is a fellow in the American Institute of Architects and is a past president of Boston Society of Architects. He was the recipient of BSA's 2000 Award of Honor. With that, our second awardee is Allyson Mendenhall, FASLA, AB 90, MLA 99. Allyson is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Sasaki's Landscape Architecture civil engineering and ecology practice. She directs firm-wide initiatives focused on practice-based research, evidence-based design, and standards supporting design excellence. A past chair of the GSD Alumni Council, Allyson has also served on the Harvard Alumni Association, the HAA, board as director representing the GSD and as vice president for the university-wide affairs. This year, as you know, you've been told, she is the president of the AAA. The first GSD alum to fill this position. She is an emeritus member of the boards of the Landscape Architecture Foundation and the Denver Botanic Gardens, and currently serves on the University of Colorado Denver College of Architecture and Planning Advisory Board. Chelina Odbert MUP 2007. An urban planner by training, Chelina is founding principal and CEO of Kunkui Design Initiative, also known as KDI, a nonprofit design practice committed to building a more and just public realm. While still at the GSD, let us all be inspired, Chelina and 5 of her classmates launched the interdisciplinary initiative to expand equity and inclusivity in places that have long been overlooked or actively harmed by traditional design and planning approaches. She has written extensively about KDI's community-engaged approach to planning and design in the US and abroad, and has held teaching appointments at the GSD and UCLA. Chelina and her work have been recognized by notable institutions, including the Van Allen Institute, the Ashoka Changemakers, the Aspen Institute, the Architectural League of New York, and most notably, recently, the Cooper Hewitt Museum. We're so excited.
Thank you. And now to introduce the 2021 winners. Deanna Van Buren LF 13. Deanna Van Buren is a nationally recognized activist architect leading the research, formulation, and advocacy of restorative justice centers, a radical transformation of the criminal justice system. Deanna sits on the National Board of Architects, Designers, Planners for Social Responsibility and is the co-founder and design director of Designing Justice and Designing Spaces, based in Oakland, California. Designing Justice and Designing Spaces is an innovative architecture and real estate development firm that designs restorative justice centers instead of prisons, with the goal of ending the age of mass incarceration. Van Buren's recent social impact work includes Restore Oakland, a multi-use hub for restorative justice and workforce development. The Pop-Up Village, a mobile site activation tool. Van Buren's work has been featured at the TED Women and Women in Architecture Awards honoring pioneer professionals. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Architecture from the University of Virginia, an MArch from Columbia University, and is an alumna of the GSD Loeb Fellowship. Everett Fly, MLA 77, who is joining us on Zoom today. As the first African-American graduate of the Masters in Landscape Architecture program, Everett Fly witnessed firsthand the lack of architectural scholarship centered on the African-American experience. In response, Fly began the Black Settlements in America research project, setting in motion decades of groundbreaking design research focused on the history of Black settlements across the United States. Fly is the recipient of the 2014 National Endowment for the Humanities Medal, the 2018 Texas Heroes of Preservation Award, and the 2021 Daughters of the American Revolution Historic Preservation Medal, and is recognized as a national leader whose work has transformed our collective understanding of the significance of Black places and spaces across America. And finally, Jack Dangermond, MLA 69, who is not able to be here with us today, but is certainly with us in our hearts. Jack Dangermond is the founder and president of ESRI, With a background in landscape architecture and urban design, he and his wife Laura founded Esri in 1969 on the idea that computer-based mapping and analysis could make significant contributions to geographic planning and environmental science, and boy, were they right. Since then, Esri has become the global market leader in GIS and location intelligence, with 49 offices worldwide and 11 dedicated research centers and a user base of about 350,000 organizations around the world. Dangermond completed his undergraduate degree in landscape architecture at the California State Polytechnic University in Pomona. He then earned a master in urban planning from the University of Minnesota and a master's in landscape architecture degree from the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. His early work in the school's laboratory for computer graphics and spatial analysis led directly to the development of Esri's ArcInfo GIS software. Dangermond has received many acknowledgments and awards for his contributions to the fields of geography, environmental science, planning, and GIS, including 13 honorary degrees and the Order of Orange Nassau from the Dutch government. And now, with these wonderful introductions complete, I hand it over to Dean Whiting to host a remarkable conversation with these outstanding leaders. Thank you.
So it is at once quite humbling, I will say, to listen to those bios. It's really remarkable what all of you have accomplished. It's notable that you all have played a role in addressing issues, especially of inequity, I will say, across the spectrum and how that engages design. So I think that's quite notable. And I think also a testament to the alumni community that you are the people who have been brought forward for this important new award. I wanted to start with a question that, okay, I'm a dean. It's kind of maybe an obvious question for me to ask, and somewhat leading, I admit. So I want you to describe how your GSD experience put you in a position to change the world. No, seriously. So I would love to hear if you feel that your GSD experience put you in a position to change the world, and if it didn't, how it could. So we'll start. I will either cold call you, or we'll start with volunteers. Everett, you're looking thoughtful.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. And I think you kind of touched on it in your opening remark. I certainly did not come to the GSD expecting to change the world. I was hopeful to advance my interest in landscape architecture and my interdisciplinary interest in planning and urban design and the other professions. And that clearly, as you stated, is one of the most important things about the GSD is just being exposed, being immersed, everyday contact with that interdisciplinary dynamic. To me, it makes a tremendous difference when you're learning and when you're forming your strategies and the things that you want to do. So the classes were certainly, as you would expect, and again, you mentioned it in your introduction as you talked about the core classes. And I probably have used every single one of them almost every day of my my professional practice. But there was also a kind of an informal education at the GSD. I learned so much from my fellow students, and again, you mentioned it in your opening remarks, students from all over the world, students from different disciplines. My particular class, I clearly remember we had folks that were cross crossing disciplines. There was one classmate that had a PhD in English literature. There was another student that was an accomplished artist, and it could go on and on. And then having the opportunity to engage with the Loeb Fellows. One of my favorite emeritus faculty was Professor Norman Newton. Being able to sit down with Norman several times each semester, from the very first semester I was there until the last day right before graduation, I had tea, believe it or not, with Norman, and he would quiz me on what I was doing and why I was doing, and also provide me with his enormous insight, into planning and landscape architectural history. And it was probably because of folks like that kind of opened my vision to what could be accomplished, quote, in the world. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to start the discussion.
No, fantastic. And you referred to my opening remarks not just once, but 3 times. So you get a total gold star. You get like extra credit, Everett. Fantastic. So I want to turn to Deanna next, actually, because as a Loeb Fellow, it's a slightly different course that you go through. And I don't know how many Loeb Fellows are in the audience, but what was your experience like in terms of how it affected your practice, which is quite unique?
Yeah, I was like, it's not fair for me to answer this because I went to classes at MIT, at Lesley University. Do you even know that it's here? I took them there. But, it's funny the last year, even the last few years, I've really started to realize the tremendous influence it's had on my practice and the way that we practice. Like, I'm a little slow on the uptake. It was 10 years ago, but I started like, wait a minute. And I think, I came out of California in this like intensive environment, just in my little world, and it just blew my world open to be here, right? I was being exposed. I was learning incredible new techniques and things that I didn't know, new softwares. I was 3D printing, looking at new form making. I was learning qualitative methods for designers. I was learning how to do a public narrative that helped me do the TED Talk. I was learning how to work in these radical multidisciplinary ways with policymakers, which I did a J-term class on, with theater makers, with social scientists. I was learning about mass social conflict. All of this really started to changed the way that I worked, to the point that when I got back, I actually started a new company that was a multi-use, multidisciplinary company with the real estate piece. I'm glad you're going to have a real estate program. I'm highly advocating for that. With architecture, and I have director of community engagement, and I have social scientists on my team, right? So it was a hugely influential thing to be able to experiment, explore, and innovate here with as many people as possible. It just wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't had that time here.
Excellent. Chelina, you came to the school with no background in design, and you ended up taking studio almost every semester you were here, I understand. So can you speak to how the school has changed your work or catapulted you?
Yes, sure. Quite simply, KDI is the GSD. It started here. I came here with the intent of trying to use design as a tool for social justice, but I had no idea what that meant. And in fact, I was saying earlier, and I say this all the time, I almost didn't come here if not for David Lee and Jim Stockard on Admitted Students Day, who assured me that even though I couldn't see that everywhere around me, that students had a lot of influence and ability here to shape the trajectory of their education and the trajectory of the school. I believed them, they were right. And the GSD has really just been a gift that keeps on giving. It's the people of KDI, past, present, future. We send students here all the time. Students come to work for us. So many of the faculty are still really faculty that weren't even here when I was here, but Diane Davis has become such an important part of our work. And so it really was a place that also just taught me all the things that I needed to know to try to do this work, the technical training and I really credit the interdisciplinary nature of the school. I teach at other places now, and it's very clear to me just how special it is, especially as an urban planner, to be in a design school that really lives and embraces that interdisciplinarity. And I would say, more than anything else, this place really gave me the space to challenge the traditional way of doing things and to find like-minded people who were also challenging those things. And it questioned us, and it kind of made us work hard to defend those positions and make sure they were grounded in good ideas and good practice. But ultimately, there is no KDI without the GSD.
Fantastic. And I understand that you and Deanna are working together on projects.
We are.
And you already credited David with bringing you here. So I feel like we're already sort of like one family here. But
Absolutely.
David, so you influenced Chelina to come. You clearly were performing very well at the faculty day. And you and I actually were faculty together many years ago. Tell me about your experience being here as a student.
Well, two things. Number one, I am incredibly honored and pleased to be here with my cohort and to be recognized by people that I have so much respect for. But I also want to give a special shout out to my late partner and his cohort of people who 50 years ago thought as African Americans they could go out and form design firms and try to design to the highest quality. And we all pushed each other, we all supported and encouraged each other, and they're here with me. The GSD certainly puts one in a position to change the world. Now, whether or not we've changed it, that jury may still be out, but hope springs eternal. But what it does give you, among a host of intangibles, is first, a lasting network of people from all over the world. For a number of years, I served on the Board of Trustees of the Berklee College of Music. And so many of you architecture people, particularly ones of my era, remember when you went to that first colloquium or whatever, and they said, look to the right of you and look to the left of you, and one of you won't be here next year. And that sort of set the tone. But when I went to the first Berklee, they said, look to the right of you and look to the left of you, and those are the people you'll work with throughout the rest of your life. And I'm hoping and I'm confident, particularly with my great favorite dean, that we continue at the GSD to promote that kind of community. The other thing is, it's just the imprimatur of the GSD gives you some access. The fact that you're a Harvard person at least gets you in the door, and people think you know something. You may have to fake it for a while, but ultimately you get there. But it certainly gives you an opportunity to be at the table, and one is challenged and charged to make the best of that opportunity. As has been said before, we have, it broadens your view of the world. The people who walk through this room, this space, in the old place before this one was built, we had something called a great space. It was a big place in the middle that anybody in the whole world might come through. That's where the coffee machine was. That's where everybody just sort of gathered and bumped into each other. But one of the things this does, just the people you meet at Beer and Dogs or on the trays or whatever, really broadens your perspective. And then finally, it gives you confidence because you have studied with some of the best, talented, and brightest future planning and design talent in the world. And you come out of here knowing you can hang.
So Allyson, you already had that Harvard imprimatur when you ended up coming like a block further to the GSD. What did you gain here that you hadn't already gained in the yard?
Well, first of all, responding to the comment about the importance of core, as an English major, coming to the GSD core was essential, so just wanted to shout out the core. I really, the thing that I wanted to talk about is the iterative process and the learning that that first idea you put out there may not be the best idea. You may not arrive at the right way the first time by yourself. Most likely you won't. And the process of desk crits and pinning up your work and sort of in real time getting feedback and input, which, you know, as an English major, I'd turn in the paper, I'd get back the sparse comments, if any, and a grade, and, you know, it wasn't really a dialogue. And so it was just transformative to me, not always fun to hear the feedback that we are all getting as you stand up and present your work. But I think that it really sets the stage for, well, it introduces a sense of humility. It kind of wipes away any ego. It really opens you up for hearing feedback and comments so that then I think it sets the stage for collaboration and being able to kind of problem solve with other people, because you're used to this idea that it's going to take a couple cycles, it's going to take a couple turns to arrive at a stronger idea, a more impactful idea, and it's really just essential to get things done. So I think that process was so foreign to me, but I really pinpoint the GSD as it really established a new norm for me, a way of practicing.
That's a super way of putting it, and of course an English major would be able to do that so clearly. But no, seriously, I think that you captured something that's incredibly important. People don't understand of a design education, the combination of the iterative process and the obligation to be able to articulate what you're doing and go at it time and time again and figure out how to translate it both verbally and visually. I think that's really important. So what are the ways where your practices or practice as you want it to be can address these issues that are relevant? I mean, you already do. Many of you are really out there changing the world in the way, engaging issues of equity. But how would you advocate for how practice can actually speak to the relevant issues in the world? Give some advice, please.
After you said that, I really don't want to say anything. not to this group of people. I mean, I would just say that I don't know how it's going to change the world. I only know what's happening now, right? What we're doing now. And I think that the advocacy, right? So the issue we're trying to address is end mass incarceration. We're abolitionists. We want to see a world without prisons. We believe it's possible. And what's allowed us to advocate for that, and I think really make some progress and really support this initiative, has been that we are a nonprofit organization, all right? So we have a hybrid company tax structure. I'm going to talk a little business model real quick, just to keep it technical and practical. So we're a nonprofit that owns a for-profit entity that then oversees our individual LLCs. And the nonprofit piece has allowed us to do what we want, basically, and convince people to give us money to innovate and to do R&D and to develop new pieces of infrastructure. I am not tied to an RFP. I'm not doing competitions. I'm not going to be told what to do. The systems that hire us are structurally racist. So we have to get out from underneath that. And that's allowed us to do things and say things and push back. I've pushed back on mayors. I was like, I'm not doing that. You'll have to fire me. And you know what? They don't. They don't. And that's a power that architects are not wielding appropriately. If we want to be leaders, we cannot be under the arm of the law. You know, we have to be able to be at the table. We have to move upstream, right? So being part of the discussion, when a policy is changing, we're at the table. The design and place are critical components to how we're going to do whole systems change, and we have to be at the table. And that's a system has allowed us to do that, and the multidisciplinary nature of the firm has allowed us to do that. So if that's advice, I don't know. Good luck working out.
It's super advice. Brilliant strategy. And I think also recognizing that we can't simply follow the policies as they're writ, often by the entities that have put things in place that we need to change. So absolutely. Others? David?
I actually wrote some things down, which isn't always my style.
Okay, they did
but,
see the questions in advance.
But
You're giving it away, man.
But I knew I was going to be facing a tough crowd, so I wanted to be ready. But you know, I believe it is possible to nurture a both-and worldview. So many things today seem to be isolated, as if you can only do one thing. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, as a person of color, and black men in particular, we have always had to negotiate two worlds simultaneously. I used to spend studio time, like everybody else, into the middle of the night, along with others around the campus in different kinds of programs, law school, the business school, you name it. But on Saturday afternoons, we used to play basketball over at the Cage. And it was particularly tough with the business school students because they had this thing called a WAC. It was almost like a sketch problem. They would get a problem at like 9 o'clock on Friday. They had to turn it in at the end of the day. So when those guys came to play, they were wired. But here you had people really pushing each other and calling each other names not exactly that your mother would approve, but really going at it in old school fashion. And then the next day, they would be in the law school or the business school or the design school speaking the King's English. So the idea that you can, well, for one thing, I mean, and many of us, you know, grew up in neighborhoods that didn't exactly resemble the leafy campus of an academic institution or a lot of other places in the world. That's not to say that some of us didn't grow up in some very nice, very stable neighborhoods. I want to get that out there too. But as a result, we also believed that you could do architecture and planning beyond the pursuit of just abstract beauty, that you could address issues of equity, cultural representation, social conditions, climate, and empowerment. That these weren't formal, what's the word I'm looking for? Foreign or mutually exclusive pursuits. But now, let me be clear. It was always Don's belief and my belief, and it continues to be the firm's mantra, that all of our clients, regardless of financial resources or lack of exposure, still deserve the best design outcomes that we can provide. Mm-hmm. I always say that the materials don't have to be precious, but the proportions do. Just one little bit more here. I'm still kind of a form follows function guy, and I've committed to the notion that some things that might be considered constraints are really opportunities, and opportunities to find new formal language, programmatic imperatives, and development patterns to address issues of affordability, climate change, and equity. The key is to be open to new possibilities and opportunities to collaborate. Above all, one needs to listen and respect the constituencies we're trying to serve. This, by the way, requires challenging the old question, what is the difference between God and an architect? The answer is, God doesn't want to be an architect.
I haven't heard that one. But I absolutely underscore your saying that these opposite camps are absolutely detrimental. And the idea that one could separate form and the social, or form and program, is unimaginable to me. And so I really appreciate your putting that down, and also your own experience. Chelina or Allyson or Everett?
My answer is quite similar to yours, Deanna, in that I think that we have the privilege as a firm to work almost exclusively on those kind of needle-moving issues. But to do that, we had to first rewrite our mode of practice almost entirely because, as you pointed out, Deanna, the most traditional form of practice takes the problem definition process out of the hands of architects, out of the hands of those most affected by the problem, and really restricts it to a professional class of decision makers. And in doing that, the real problem and the real path to addressing it is often missed completely. So we had to find a way around that, and for us, that was also about becoming a nonprofit practice. And in doing that, we can write the briefs. We can define the problems alongside of a community or alongside of a constituency that typically doesn't have the same direct access to this sort of professional services. And that's been really important. That is how we continue to focus on the things that matter most, or these kind of relevant questions of today, as you put it. But I like, when talking about these things, I think it's so important to say, like, that isn't the only way to do it. You don't have to be, quote, an activist practice, because let's face it, designers got us into a lot of these messes, these inequities in the built environment that we talk about now is so urgent to address. And because of that, it is all of our responsibility, no matter what type of practice we have, to look for the ways that we can expand the boundaries of our projects, regardless of what the RFP asked for, what the scope defined, to push into those spaces where even the most specific, constrained project can be a project that moves the needle ecologically, socially, economically, and somehow works to repair those things that our disciplines may have been responsible for putting in place in the first place.
You all are making my job really easy, because that's the perfect segue to Allyson, who's recently joined a large practice. And I'm curious if you can speak to that other kind of practice and how to make a difference through a larger firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, in my third month joining Sasaki in our Denver office, and it's just a dream come true for me. And so aligned with my interests and my practice over the past couple decades since graduating from the GSD, and that I think I've always been a convener around content and wanting to bring people together to share ideas and knowledge and generate knowledge, and then figure out how do you apply that within a practice. So I have been at more traditional practices, but one of the things at Sasaki that we really value is research in the context of the project, and that sort of takes two forms. Those inquiries and those discoveries that you make in delivering the work and exploring every nook and cranny that's relevant to the project, and delivering a high quality deliverable at the end of the day. But the wonderful thing about Sasaki is that there's also a research program that enables several staff members, groups of staff members, to apply for research grants. And so to kind of take those questions that they didn't have the time or the space to dig into more deeply in the context of the project, with its constraints of scopes and fees and schedules and some of those realities. But the program actually provides funding for them to pursue some of those deeper questions that they feel like they didn't have the ability to tackle. And I also think that it's almost like a crowdsourcing from within the firm, meaning that you could have a staff member who's 25 and a staff member who's 45 who are thinking about certain research questions in addition to their daily work, but this gives them the time and space to pursue that. And then some of the research has developed into tools and applications that, of course, funnel back into the work, but then are put out there for other practices to adopt. And there's the carbon conscious tool that was developed, and also the climate park change tool that many other firms are using. And so putting out there the discoveries that have happened in the context of research within, so that more practices benefit, and frankly, it's out there for public sector practitioners as well. So I think just having that space to be able to discover and do research beyond just the project context.
And I think that your mentioning of the crowdsourcing is a really interesting way of putting it. It's actually makes me think a little bit of the GSD. So I'll note I didn't come here, and part of the reason was I actually thought it was a more corporate, overly professional environment, and I chose a different path. And being here, being really immersed here now, I realize it's not. I mean, that there are different ways of entering into and affecting practice, and I see this as a sort of parallel to what you're describing. Everett.
Well, you all have really hit it. The thoughts and comments about the ones I've run into, they say, stay in your lane. And I'm not too good at that. and I agree with Deanna that you don't always get fired because you don't stay in your lane. And I think if you have a good client, or a client that's really sincerely interested in addressing the issue, that they will listen. But what I learned as I started my Black Settlements in America research was that I was just taken, and David talked about it, I was just taken with the lack of, I call it vocabulary, planning and design vocabulary to address these issues. I don't think it's enough to simply use the traditional styles and design form. I don't think it's enough to use pop culture icons, because as I got deeper and deeper into my work, I began to find how much folks have invested in getting the little pieces of land and putting them together, to form and shape and hold and protect their communities. And then I was struck by how many millions of acres of land and tens of thousands of historic structures and sites had been lost due to lack of documentation, lack of advocacy, and several of you have mentioned it, professional assistance. And so I found by directly engaging with the communities that it helps, you're helping raise their self-esteem. I actually have come across a number of communities, and I would say, this is a historic structure, and they'd say, well, why is that historic? It's just this old house that's been around for 150 years. and once I helped them piece together the history and how it fit into the bigger context, they got excited and actually picked up the cause and picked up the advocacy themselves. But for them to hear and see a design professional, a trained professional especially, it really seems to work wonders in terms of inspiring them, encouraging them, and helping them contribute in ways that, when you look at the story and you look at the history, they've been contributing all along. I've had a number of client types recently that, as a couple of you have mentioned, have come looking for assistance with research and different ways to interpret. And I think that, again, the GSD, the nature of it, and again, the core of it, Dean, helps prepare your students to address those issues, in ways that kind of get us out of the gridlock of, the same old way that we talk about planning, or the same old decision-making processes. And as you all are aware and recognize, we, America, are in a situation where, we really have some bad habits, and it's time for us to address them, and with fresh ideas, new ideas. I remember when I guess after my first year at the GSD, and I went back home to Texas. I'm from Texas. I'm from San Antonio, is where I am now. And folks would ask me about, what is it like at the GSD? And I would tell them, I said, it's pretty amazing, all the things that you all have mentioned, but I said, those people don't seem to be afraid of any kind of design challenge. I mean, I had gone through 5 years, pretty rigorous years, I thought, professional architecture degree, pursuing a professional architecture degree. But when I got to the GSD, I never saw so many people, when an assignment was given, I mean, they were just chomping at the bit to get at it. And that's what it takes if you're going to address any of these, serious problems. You have to be fearless. You have to be creative and innovative, and, get after it.
I love how yeah, exactly. It's a fantastic example of expanding our reach, and I think also acknowledging, I think designers have a bad rap of having, speaking only in jargon, and I think all of you communicate remarkably well. That's why you got the award. But also your example of explaining, why a building is a historic structure, that's part of our role, is actually to clarify that for a broader constituency. So it's incredibly valuable. I know our time is tight, so I want to open up. Besides, we've got all these people who have prepared their questions, so it's going to be so hard to get them all in. So
can I say just one thing?
Absolutely.
Just to wrap up
Yeah.
for us on behalf of a lot of people in this room. Despite the formidable capabilities of the digital platforms, the old adage still remains: garbage in, garbage out. And I just I want you guys to meet us old guys halfway. Sometimes a well-considered sketch on a piece of tracing paper actually has merit.
Excellent. All right, we open the floor to questions, and there are mic runners. So if you have a question, hey, excellent.
There is a proposal here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to build a new $50 million women's prison. There are architects who are designing that new women's prison, and I'd like to know what folks here think about that. We are opposing it as formerly incarcerated women, and we are envisioning and working with people like Deanna to create what different looks like. We don't believe that architects should use their skill to build prisons. So I'd like to hear what others think about that.
I mean, yeah. You're speaking directly to Deanna's expertise.
Oh, no, I think she wants to hear from others, because Andrea knows what I think about support.
And so I open the floor.
Couldn't agree more, and it's why we do the work that we do, and it's why we do it with Deanna and others. And there are so many places that our skills are so urgently needed, and that, in our opinion, is absolutely not one of them.
Others.
I just think if different approaches need to be taken, then listening is part of that, and listening and understanding, and not being designers not thinking that they're the expert. So just understanding different approaches and listening to partners and constituents and stakeholders, and people affected directly by the places that we design.
I think this is a really tough one, and that we have to reach out to people like yourself to figure out what the alternatives are. Obviously, some of the places they're in right now are awful, and people can be in a better situation. I don't know what that situation is or how to design it, but I have to tell you, one of the things that was most disheartening to me was that I went on a Mayor's Institute international trip to Auschwitz, and I was in Warsaw, and I got to see the ghetto wall. Now, in my mind, I was thinking it was like the Berlin Wall, just some concrete block with some concertina wire on the top. No, that wall was designed. It was designed with Jewish icons and other kinds of things on it. It was, frankly, beautifully designed. And it really got to me that somebody could sit in an office and bring themselves to design something that had such a terrible consequence. So, what we do, we in the final analysis, we want to build something. So a lot of what we build creates problems. What we have to do is force ourselves and find ways to build things that solve problems. And so I think this begins with, my grandmother used to say, if you didn't care where you were going, any road would do. So I think what we need to do is figure out where we're going, and then maybe we can find a more humane road to get there.
Good. Additional questions? You all got homework.
We may be between them and beer and dogs.
No, they've got to wait. You've got a phenomenal panel here, Anna.
I just want to say thank you all. It's just astounding to be here and listen to your beautiful moderation, your questions. So rapid fire, amazing human beings over here. What's the challenge that you would give us in this moment, this historic moment? Oh, and make it hard.
Who's going first?
I mean, I think I already said it, but I'll just say it again. Don't sit on the sidelines. I think as designers, it's particularly, with a specific disciplinary focus, it's easy to say, like, well, I'm a landscape architect, and this is really a problem of planning or a problem of architecture, a problem of policy. But we all know, especially having gone through training here at the GSD, that problems of the built environment are so intersectional and so important to be looked at holistically. And so it's too easy to say, like, that doesn't define me, or to say the brief doesn't give me room to do that. So don't sit on the sidelines and look for the way to insert yourself and to make your piece of the puzzle really matter, even when it doesn't seem like there's an obvious path toward that.
Excellent.
If you want a hard challenge, I'll throw it out. We have to figure out a way to do better for our children. We have utterly failed young people in this country, first through what we built, and then where we are from a political stance right now. I don't think we have any idea what this pandemic and this working from home and all these silos and things, what kind of effect that's going to have on us in the long run in terms of socialization. I'm zoomed out. I got to tell you. You know what I mean? 1 hour on a Zoom is like 3 hours in a meeting. You miss all kinds of nuance. There is no spontaneous combustion that comes there. And we got a bunch of kids sometimes that just, they don't know how to solve things. There was that magic hour between the end of school and when your parents got home where you had to figure it out. Now your parents are home. Jesus, When do you get to make mistakes? When do you get to learn? When do you get to experiment? There is so much going on out there that I don't think we have to create challenges. The challenges are out there for us. But I do think we have to really think about the younger generation that's coming along and the world they inherit and do whatever we possibly can with the tools we have to try and make that a better place.
Excellent. And I'll piggyback on that to say, I think that all the young people you meet, you should expose them to design as a possibility. And because most kids have no clue what that means and wouldn't know that that's a path to dealing with the world's problems. And so I think that it's really great to put that generation on the table for us. Others?
Go ahead. Okay. I would add that as president of the Harvard Alumni Association this year, I'm doing everything in my power to amplify design education across the university and be a voice for design and the kind of unique skills and problem-solving conversation that we can lead and synthesize so many different inputs. And so I need your help. The Alumni Council is absolutely about engaging alumni and building community across multiple generations and geographies and disciplines. And so we encourage you to get involved, be engaged. There are 14,000 plus or minus GSD alumni out in the world, global alumni. There are over 400,000 Harvard alumni, 2/3 of which are graduate school alumni. And if you get involved in your area and your community, there is, I think, a way to educate people about design and advance the design conversation. So that's my challenge, is let's all get out there and get involved. So.
I always give the same challenge, so if you've heard this before, my apologies, but I always challenge us to do our inner work, right? Look inside, do the healing work you need to do on yourself, do your unconscious bias work. There are a lot of professions that are really tackling that. We're not so much, because I truly believe that, the things that we believe on the inside, we build it, right? We actually manifest it in the world around us. It amplifies, it foments those beliefs, and it ricochets, right? It's a powerful thing what we do. If we don't do the inner work, if we don't look at what we truly believe, what we truly think, and then analyze that, we will do harm. What manifests inside manifests outside. So that is my invitation to all of you. Please do the work on you.
Everett.
Those are tremendous answers. It's just great to hear this discussion. But a few years ago, actually more than a decade ago, decade and a half ago, I had a chance to serve on my state humanities council. And I remember the first meeting that I went to, one of the folks said, "You're an architect. What are you doing at a humanities meeting?" And my answer, of course, was, and you've touched on it, is that, architects work with people. We work in spaces and places for people. Yeah. And that was the end of that discussion. But I was able to serve more than a decade on that humanities council. And one of the things that I enjoyed, it was like another education, and Deanna kind of touched on it, but there was a way that the council would engage issues. And I mean, there's nothing new going on that's going on today. I mean, everything from, race and gender to economic injustice. But the way the humanities community approached it, nobody was calling anybody a name. Nobody was cussing anybody out. Nobody was, disrespecting. And there were some really hard and serious discussions. And if the architects and the designers and the planners and the landscape architects could get into that framework I think it would reinforce what Deanna has just said, but it would also help us Americans, engage these issues and reconstruct, if you will, our American unity.
Wow. So I have to say it's been really powerful listening to all of you and how you so fluidly are able to talk about your own experiences, put them within the galaxy of the GSD, but more importantly within the larger galaxy of the world's problems. And I'm incredibly grateful to all of you for the incredible work you've done, and to the alumni community for recognizing you and bringing you forth with this award. I'm going to turn things back over to our dear leader, Peggy Burns.
Thanks, Sarah. And thank you to our remarkable alumni panel for sharing their perspectives on how a design education shaped and influenced their lives. And I love David's thought that in turn gives us the opportunity to change the world. So I think we all aspire to that. We have the opportunity to change the world. Sarah thanked my team, but I will just add again my personal thanks to a fabulous team. We're a small but mighty team at the moment, and we got a lot done in short order. Special shout out to Lindsay LaGrasse and Taniqua Patrick, who were big leaders in this effort. So, as I said, this idea came from listening, from asking questions, what would be meaningful and interesting for you? And you gave us that advice, and we took it. So we're thrilled to host the comeback. And we want this time today and tomorrow to be really joyful for each of you. So speaking of joy, we hope that as you engage with our students tonight, you'll consider making or thinking about making a gift for student support. There are posters with a QR code throughout the building, and you can just scan it on your phone and make a gift. And any gifts that are made to this account will be matched by the President's office. So as Sarah said, last spring she announced a $4 million match to raise endowed fellowships, a one-to-one match. But any gift you make tonight in any dollar amount is really greatly appreciated, and we hope that that's your way of showing that you're having a good time. So, and if you're interested in making an endowed gift, please talk to a member of my team. As they say, no gift is too small and no gift is too large. So now I'd like to ask you to join us along with more students, because we know students are there because we've promised food. And I will tell you that in the Alumni Lounge tonight, we noticed basically before you arrived that all the coffee and cookies were already eaten. So we know that there'll be plenty of students out there, and one of the things you ask us to do is to give you opportunities to engage with students. So beer and dogs is a long-standing tradition at the GSD. And long-standing as it might be, we cannot identify the origins of this tradition. So we're really hoping that there's someone in this room that can tell us. So you have 3 opportunities now. We have a food line, actually 2 food lines. We have multiple bars, and there'll be people out here to direct you in that direction, so you can have food, you can get a drink. We also, in the front of the building, have an installation, which is, and this is really the first program in this installation. It's called After the Fact. It's an installation by Stephanie Lloyd, Sam Sheffer, and McCloy Leonard. And After the Fact proposes the intersection of an architectural fact-making device, a wall, in dialogue with the Kenzo Tange Pavilion, which is a new pavilion that's been installed out on the corner in front of the GSD. Taking seriously the idea of construction as performance, After the Fact aims to demonstrate the act of building as an accessible and discursive process to those without conventional expertise, the public. So that is program is starting at 8 o'clock. And then we also have, I think some of you were able to see Echo Folly, which is taking place in the Loeb Library. The library will stay open. This is a fabulous wrap-up of a studio by Grace Law and Erica Nagensky, and with student work in the library. So we hope you can do all three, all four, have a drink, have a dog, see Echo Folly, and see the exhibit. And we'll look forward to seeing you back tomorrow at 9 o'clock for breakfast. Thank you for being here. Thanks for coming back.